Got a signal, looks good. Does that seem good? We on?
Tell you right now. I see it. There goes it. There you are. And you got the solid.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We're a couple of minutes early.
Good evening.
Early, which is better than being late. We've had to change some things because of upgrades and YouTube and Mevo. And what we really need is if you're watching this, to subscribe.
Yes. Hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, we're going to be like one of those videos where press down here and subscribe. Because apparently if you don't have enough subscribers, you have to work harder. It's kind of like life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of how it is in life.
You
So
don't have money.
yeah, if you don't have enough money, you got to work harder.
Subscribers are money.
Thanks, Gil.
Bye, Gil.
So yeah, if you think about it, I don't know what I'm doing here. There's another one. Anyway, leave it there. If you think about it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you have subscribed, thank you for your subscription. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
So this is take two. If you don't know what take two is, it's where we look back at the talk on Sunday and dig into it a little bit, ask some questions. Yep. And so I try to bring someone else on that has a different perspective, has some thoughts on it, some questions about it, provoke some kind of divergent thinking. So it's not just me telling one story, but we get to kind of hear multiple layers. And I think that's super helpful to get a little bit more nuance to the things that we're talking about. And so, last week it was a real emotional weekend for me. I talked about the memorial for Colleen on Saturday, the day before. And actually that Sunday was a year since my mom had passed. Yeah. Also, a lot of interaction with people from Genesis and from family and friends that have been struggling with a lot of what's going on in life. Even today I got another text from somebody that says, we're closed down, everything's locked down again. I thought we were going to be able to meet soon, and nope, we're not. Just to let you know, we are not meeting. We are not gathering here together. If you can stay at home, stay safe. But if you need to be here, for whatever reasons, you can come down here. We're not going to turn you away, but we are practicing this safe distancing and masks and those kinds of things. But it being a very emotional week for me, I changed my topic at the last minute just because I felt I needed to. Instead of it being more informational, I kind of went to John's Gospel on Advent. That's a lot deeper and more, I don't know, something familiar, I guess, but I thought is comforting. The whole point that I wanted to really bring out was the honest frailty that the gospel carries with it. This power given to a mom, a teenage mother, to care for a baby. You can't get more vulnerable than that. And that's where God enters into this picture. And I wanted to start with that frailty because that's the sense I've been getting for a number of people. Is I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling that way because of the loss of a friend, remembering the loss of my mom. And so starting off, this is gospel. It's frailty. But it's where you are, And one of the things that I was aware of because of the memorial is, once again, you can't escape our humanity. You can't escape our mortality. You can't escape that we're finite. You can't escape the fact that we have only so many number of days and then our life is over. And all those things bring into clarity who we really are.
Yeah.
And that's where gospel meets us. Any thoughts on that? Just kind of starting off with that idea.
When I was listening to it, I got the vibe that you were after in a weird way. sometimes I'm like searching for it, but I feel like I understood, and maybe it's because I know the season that you're in, um, and having to celebrate your mom's first year passing, and Colleen, and then just being able to. The cool thing is that I honestly believe if someone can't share something that they don't have, and I felt you in that place, like that that it was easier for me to relate because you were coming from an honest place, and not saying that you ever don't, but when you're connected, deeply connected to something,
Yeah.
I think the truth comes out a little bit more clear. And one thing maybe that if I had a direct thought or a question for you was, um, why maybe if someone listening to the message, why did you just decide to choose frailty or vulnerability to connect Advent to the gospel, or us to the gospel?
I think because if good news is going to reach us, it has to reach us there. It has to reach us on our worst days. It has to reach us when we're weakest, not when we're strong, not on our best days. Gospel has to meet us where the need really is, right? And the idea of gospel, again, is good news. It's what is good if it's not good on your worst day? How good is it if it doesn't find you there and give you something? And the fact that Christ is born, that God empties himself and humbles himself, and meets us in the vulnerability and steps into the weakest part is meaningful. In other words, the writer of Hebrews says we don't have a high priest that isn't touched with our infirmities, but in every way was tempted like we are, but without sin. And so having an understanding that he knows, and not just, oh yeah, I know what you're going through. It's like, no, I've been through it
Right.
with you.
And that was the kind of you. Maybe I might be jumping ahead, but you touching on how why was Jesus, why was God, coming down as a poor, son of a
Teenage,
teenage
unwed mother.
unwed mother.
Yeah.
It's like for the solidarity, and I think that's connected to what you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
we, if Jesus, the story of Jesus ended with him being a rich Anglo business owner who just so happened to be really popular, and
Yeah.
people found out that he happened to be the Son of Christ, the Son of God. It might not have sat well with us. I think there's a relatability. There's even people that I've had conversations with about God, about Jesus, and they're like, well, that even if they don't believe in God, they might say like, well, that Jesus of yours, he really had some things to teach the world, or
Yeah.
like there's this kind of relatability to anybody kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think I talk about too how this story is one that we see played out throughout movies and
Yeah.
so many things. That idea of someone who has power but has to give up the power and then become more, right?
Yeah.
Get through the obstacles, and that's kind of our human story. That's what connects us to meaning. It's like, okay, it's not what you have, it's what you make from the lack of things. That's what pulls us in and makes us root for the hero.
Right.
You know.
Maybe tell people what you were thinking about when you were saying that Jesus didn't act like God, like because that might be a little kind of one of those statements that someone's like, well, how could he not act like who he is? But like, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, it's taken from Colossians. Though he were God, he did not think upon himself to take on the equality with God, but emptied himself. The whole idea of Jesus not acting like God was not acting like he was someone who should be worshipped, should be served. He accepted worship, but he came to serve, right? He didn't come to be served, but he came to serve. And so the idea of not acting like God, not like acting as if you owed him, but acting as if he was here to give to you, which really is
So,
kind
which
of,
is his God. It's
yeah,
maybe
it
he might
really
be
is
saying
God.
like not acting like a God or the God is he's showing himself through the life of that
Yeah,
humility.
well, we're seeing the character of God, but
Right.
he didn't come with the authority of God,
Right, right, right.
or the power that we think all powerful,
Right.
those kinds of things that we attribute to God, the omnis. Um,
Yeah.
Instead, he came in the humility and came to serve. That was an important thing. I know someone posted from, Jesus had all the freedom to do whatever he wanted, but he chose to used his freedom to serve.
Right.
And I think too, part of with the closing down again of everything, and again, people getting all riled up. And I want to be clear here. I'm not siding with, one side or the other. This is a complicated thing. My niece is having to close her hair salon down again after just reopening it, and this is their busiest season. And the sheriff department in Riverside posting that if you open your business, the governor has said that we're going to close you down. He says, we're not going to do that to you. There's just this tension. It's like, okay, the governor's saying this, but we're not going to say. And I skeptical. I think like the guy's going to run for office or something, right? I'm thinking he's got political agendas to this. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's just trying to make a statement. I don't know. I shouldn't judge that, but I understand that, and in some ways, like I applaud that. But what I don't like is when I see the other side or the repercussion of, yeah, we're gonna, don't take our freedom away, and I'm not gonna wear a mask, and I'm gonna hang out with people, and I'm gonna do this, and not see that there is actually a virus and repercussions that we have to deal with.
Right.
Right. And I was talking with my daughter about this, and I mentioned to her, they had the code triage at the hospital because they are so inundated and they are getting filled up where they don't have enough rooms available. And so if someone comes in with a heart condition that needs to be admitted, but they don't have a room because someone with COVID is taking up that room for 3 weeks and has to be there. And it's not like they're just like, yeah, I got a cough, I have COVID, right? I mean, these are people who need to be hospitalized. It's not like they're just,
Right.
I feel bad, I have COVID, so put me in the
Right.
hospital. But those are the things that we don't recognize are part of this problem, right? And so I think it's important to recognize in this frailty, in this condition that we're in, I have people who are hurting because they can't work. I have people who are hurting because they can't beat with people and they suffer from those kinds of depression, not being people. People who are in different AA or NA groups who are committing suicide because they can't cope without the connection of their group and without that responsibility and accountability. We have to recognize that's valid, and that's why we say if you need to be here, be here, but at the same time, don't come, right? It's like we're saying if you have to be here, but if you don't have to be here, don't be here, because we want to keep this place as safe as we can
Right.
for people so the hospitals don't get inundated. And it's just a messy balance, and it comes back to Christ and the fact that Christ is here to serve people. He has all power to do what he wants. All power has been given me to heaven and earth. And what did he do with this power? He gave it away. And I think that's our example. It's like, I want to empower the people who are having small businesses, but let's do it in a way that's as safe as possible. All right. And so if we could just be responsible, and not go to the big parties and not, throw caution to the wind in the things that we do. Recognize there is still a virus. Be careful where you're at, all those things that can help slow the spread down, because it's going to get worse from what I understand the next few months before the vaccine becomes, popular. which could be a thing. We should talk about vaccines. This will be a podcast.
Let's talk about that.
But-
It could get deep.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the idea of, Christ not acting like God, but acting as a servant and caring about really where people were at.
Right.
And I think that's important that we do the same thing, so that someone who doesn't know Jesus looks at us and doesn't see us as someone who's wanting to hold on to our freedom, our power,
Yeah.
but sees us as someone who cares about them, and still, them who owns the business and them who are in the hospital.
Yeah.
So
I think at its base too, it's really cool to hear the vulnerability and the giving away of power that Jesus constantly displayed. It's from like a outside standpoint, I could see how if we took that on, how that could compel others to ask more questions. Like, I think a lot of what you're talking about with people dealing with these different tensions and so many being pulled in so many directions. I've even had to like, you should see my notes in my phone are like trying to deal with questions that I have for God. Like in prayer, I can have like conversations with God or try to hear God, but throughout the day, I'm like wrestling with it. Or I'll just be vulnerable. Okay, I'm talking about recently asking God, like, what are my next plans, or why am I having such a hard time wanting to leave CarMax, my job, for example. And I think we can put anybody's situation into maybe what I'm talking about. But there's like a moment where there's so much information being pulled, COVID having something to do with it, my responsibility to my wife, my security, my blah, blah. And then, so like, how would you tell somebody that's going through even a thorough examination of what right now looks like? Because you're saying like people are committing suicide. There's obvious conflict in people's mind that they're not able to. We can't just say, well, if you need to be around people. Because right now we're saying don't be around people. And if you, it's like they're trying to be obedient as well. So what would you tell somebody that's searching for Jesus in this moment, that is dealing with tension, that is looking for maybe how vulnerability could play into what they're dealing with right now? Like,
I think the first thing that's necessary is to name it, right? To acknowledge what it is that they're going through, the vulnerability, the fear.
Yeah.
If we don't name it, sometimes it has a side effect to us. We don't name in a relationship, if you don't name the anger you have at someone, that turns into resentment, those kinds of things. And if we don't name the fear that we have, or the pride that we have, if we don't name those things, they usually show up in, little other ways that are dark and affecting us. And so naming it, and then being able to name it not only to yourself, but to the people around you, and to even God, that's the whole idea of this incarnation, this becoming flesh, dwelling with us, is that in those things, I use the story of my grandson, having a milkshake for the first time.
Yeah.
And his reaction is just priceless.
You showed me. I saw the video.
Yeah.
I saw the video. You should have showed the people the video.
No, we shouldn't post it. It's just like, oh my God, it's like he could not contain what he felt, and he had to express it.
Right.
And I shared the same thing. It's like, oh my God, I'm afraid. Right? It's the raw honesty of, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm going through, and this is what I need.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing, I think, for us to be that open, because we're afraid, first of all, if that is the case, then I'm, too far gone, I'm lost, I'm defective, I'm worthy, I'm not wanted, or I'm not appealing. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into our mind that we feel that we lack, and so naming that makes us go down that, oh no, what if, I say I'm afraid, or I say whatever it is, that people will not like me because I don't fit that image that I think I'm supposed to have.
Yeah.
Where that's the only place you can start becoming better and healthy, is the truth. And so Jesus wants to meet us there. And I think that that's why it's so important, because we shared this a few weeks ago. God can only deal with the real you,
Yeah.
right? And that's the real you. And so I think that's kind of one of the reasons that it's so important with that, is recognizing that. And I mean, that's the recognition of needing grace, right? And that's the idea of grace and truth. Here's the truth about who I am, and what I really need right now is some grace,
Yeah.
right? And we're gonna get into this next month, grace and truth, because grace isn't just not getting or getting something you don't deserve, right? I mean, that's kind of the definition, or
Yeah.
unmerited favor. Jesus didn't show grace by just telling people, "Oh, I'm going to give you something you don't deserve." Jesus showed grace by being there with them, living with them, and we're going to look into some of those things. And so the truth opens us up for actually having grace enter into our lives.
Yeah. And then kind of moving back to Judah's reaction, and something maybe I think you might have brushed over. I think the point was there that it was like, sometimes like he didn't even think about using the Lord's name in vain, whether it's chocolate on his face, whether the purity of it, but not only that, but the reason why it was so impactful to you to watch, because of the honesty of the like we're after something like that,
Genuine,
that's genuine movement towards excitement, towards passion. We're, as artists, as artists, as creatives, we're drawn to people who are excited about what they're doing. Like, and it's easy to back someone like that, because it's really hard to stop that kind of train. And I think at its purest form, you got to see that in Judah. And I think the other side of that is telling people it's okay to not have everything figured out, to move backwards even, and get excited again about what God's doing right now, about what God's like that God's favor is upon you today. That it's not, don't wait for January 1st, like that the ball dropping is not going to change what God's doing currently right now. Like I heard like that, some things saying how like the present is like right now is the shortest moment in our life. Like we're like the past and the future anticipation, we can live in either for a very long time. Like if you think about Christmas, a kid's living in this anticipation, he's living in the future, but Christmas only lasts a very short time for them. And how we can actually become a kid again with that imagination, crayons, like don't forget you got vulnerability. Don't forget, there's frailty there, and it's okay. These are good colors, like I think that's what you're saying.
And the truth is, as excited he was over a milkshake is as upset as he gets when something doesn't go his way, right?
Right.
It's like it's still just raw and it's in the moment.
Yeah.
And so this one was a fun one to watch, but I've been around the tantrums too, where it's like, oh no, this is that, but it's still real and it's still raw. It's like I still know what's going on. With him, I know who he is because it's right there, right? And I think that sometimes we put that mask on. We don't even know who we are because we're filtering it so often. And the only way to get better, to become a better version of ourselves, to find healing, to find wholeness, is to go to the truth of what's happening. I remember talking to a friend who had committed adultery and was found out. And I was talking with him, and he was, just broken with this, and what he had done, how he had hurt so many people. And I told him the best thing that could happen to you is that you were found out, because now you can't hide behind a lie anymore. You are forced to deal with this. You're in a better place in your relationship now, even though it feels worse than you were when you were living this double life.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, glad to say that they went to counseling, they're doing great, and they're together still. But that was part of the process. It's like, for you to be with your wife, you had to own up to the fact that this is what happened, right?
Right.
And so to get better, you had to go through this, right? And that's kind of that honesty, that's kind of that vulnerability, that's kind of being genuine, so that you can actually move forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't.
Fire, you know, being
Yeah.
refined, tried by fire.
Yeah. And that's really, God stands with those who need grace, right? That's the solidarity. God stands with them and says, yeah, I know you're sick. I'll stand here with you. And speaking of sick, drink
Yeah,
your
I
tea.
know.
And if God stands with those who are in need, why wouldn't we be more honest about our need, right?
Yeah.
If that's where he stands, then that's really where we want to be, in that place of need. And so, I mean, the whole point of Sunday was to get back to the whole gospel is frailty, gospel is vulnerability, God meeting us where we're at, showing up in our neighborhood, becoming flesh, dwelling among us. And also the idea of glory. Jesus came, the glory that was the only Son given by the Father. What does it say? In him was life, and life was the light of men. The light shines in darkness. The darkness has not overcome it. Right? This is who he is. In verse 14, we have seen his glory, the glory of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. I had in my mind so many times, and we might still, the idea of God's glory is so bright that we have to hide ourselves from it. But here is glory that is pulling us into it.
Right.
Right. And I love that picture.
Yeah, I feel that Jesus has always supplied that full spectrum of who, like, he tied in the story, like the fire, and you can't look in God's face or you're gonna explode, and Moses dealing with that, and only a select few have felt enough. There's that part, and then you're like in awe. There is that part. There should be some of that. I mean, if it makes sense, it's logical to my God understanding that I shouldn't be able to stand in the presence of God, knowing who I am. And then you get Jesus, and he's part God, and he's fully human, and he's experiencing the same things you are, and you get this, and he happens to be poor, and you see yourself in that, and you see yourself in a store, and you're like, he there's something about the character that God decided to show up as is what was relatable. I don't know. I feel like he could have picked a whole bunch of different characters to come down as him, and I think what is most impressive is that anybody, believer or not, woman, man, Gentile or Jew, you're like, I can see myself for the first time in the presence of God and feel at ease,
Yeah, I mean, because Jesus being fully God, fully man, right, helped us to see how much of God there is to be, what's the word, seen in us, revealed in us, that we are more like God than we know, maybe than we dare to admit. Not that we are God, but that whole idea of, here is full God in full humanity, and this is what it looks like, is our model. This is what we are to strive towards, because this is who God is, and this is what it means to be fully human. I think those things are magnets to us, and that's a glory that pulls us in. The glory that he had with the Father, he gives to us. Those are powerful statements. Those are frightening statements, really, when you start thinking about them. And they're frightening because of the responsibility that it puts on us to represent him. But it's not a responsibility that doesn't recognize our frailty.
Yeah.
That doesn't put on us just responsibility without grace,
Right.
but puts his arm around us and says, let's get through this together, right? Because that's where truth and grace work together. It's not just, here's the truth and I love you, so go, oh, you did wrong, I'm going to point it out. For us, tell the truth in love just means judge people. It's like, tell them what they did. Oh, I'm telling you because I love you, but you did this wrong. It's
Yeah, that's something to be talked about, because I think as you grow up, that's the way you're taught who God is.
Yeah.
That's what me and Daniel were talking about the other day, about the most prominent message in Western Christianity is the Savior. God is the Savior.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saved. You know what I mean? Like, you come to him,
Yeah.
but it's like constantly being reminded he died for you. It's like almost cosmic guilt trip of like, you are so, and don't mess up now. Like it says, if that doesn't put some pressure on somebody, and all could be true, but maybe at the wrong time. And when grace and truth and vulnerability and frailty are such fatter pieces of the pie, and we're talking about the thing that comes because of these, because of who Jesus is, but the other things, like the front, and it's weird.
Well, you should never give up grace for truth, right? I mean, you should never give up truth for grace. They work hand in hand and they grow together, and they have to do that, right?
Yeah.
And otherwise they're not representative well. And we do live on that teeter-totter, grace here and truth here, so many times. Well, the truth is, you're going to be judged by God, but the grace is, and you've got this, well, okay, how do I get to the grace part? Because, well, the truth is God is with you, and his grace is with him, and he is journeying with you. And so grace and truth are like at your side, walking with you. Instead of, you pick one or the other kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to get into that next series in January.
Cool. Yeah. Looking forward to hearing what you come up with there.
Yeah. Got some ideas. Hopefully it'll be helpful. But, it is a struggle. And then when we see, how Jesus came, who he came to, what he came for, who accepted him and who felt comfortable with him, and, all those things are just the kind of things that make people want to be with him, right? And those are the kinds of things that we need to be so that people want to be with us.
Yeah.
If the marginalized of humanity wanted to be with Jesus, and the marginalized of humanity now doesn't want to be with Christians, we need to ask ourselves why.
Right.
What's different? And again, the Advent story, I believe, answers that question. And it has to do with the frailty. It has to do with the vulnerability. It has to do with the least of these. It has to do with grace to mankind. That's the heart of the good news. And so it should be at the heart of everything that we do. And hopefully that idea of glory of God isn't something that we start looking at as, well, you can't go to God, when Jesus is wanting to share that glory with you, right? And I totally understand the awesomeness of God and awe-inspiring, and of course God is that which is beyond our ability to even explain. We'll never be able to fully understand, but we can understand there is this pull, this invitation, this desire of God to be close, to be near, to be with the truth of who we are.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you've ever been in a place where you're just really hurting and you've done something really stupid, or you've really hurt somebody, and that person still forgives you, still wants to be with you, or someone comes next to you at that time, you know how precious that is.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing.
yeah, and it's such a needed thing by all of us, right?
Right. Because we all have the power to give somebody that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have. There's that person potentially in every person's circle right now. Think of that person, and you have the
Exactly.
potential to give a gift that nobody else could give this person. And
yeah. I mean, I still am trying to, in this time of quarantine, reach out to as many people as I can in ways that I'm not used to. Texts, sending something out to someone, just saying, "Hey, thinking about you. How you doing? What's going on?"
yeah,
And it's
that's good.
yeah, and takes a lot.
It does, but there's some energy given there too. You
Yeah.
know, like I mean, energy received.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not, and your intentions are right. You know, some people are doing that, but waiting to get this. Everything, your intentions can be checked. You know, like
Yeah.
some people are. I get these texts sometimes. I'm like, oh no, though they want to ask me something. You know, like how you
They want
doing? And I'm
something,
like,
yeah.
oh, how are you doing? Well, and it's like, but with the right intentions, like that could really be a God thing. You know, that could really be
Yeah.
like God speaking. And normally that's how you know when it takes energy that you don't want to give. You're like, okay, God's calling it. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
I'm not getting something from it.
I'm not getting
I'm
nothing
just
from
giving
it. Yeah.
it out. Yeah, no, that's a good litmus test there. Is if I'm just giving and I'm not getting, then it's probably a good thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a good way to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
I do love checking on people. I try to make it a thing.
Yeah, no, you're good with that. Me, I have a hard time. I am so hard with my words and just not eloquent like you. I'm not a poet.
Yeah, but you're a pastor. You have a ton of people coming to you all the time asking for advice. So
Yeah, it's just easier for me to talk to people than to write it out. I have a hard time writing because the dyslexia and other things that I deal with. I always put things down and I look them over. Oh no, did I send that?
I need to write mine out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's that time though for me. I think
Yeah.
this vulnerability and trying to be honest, like part of that for me anyways has to come with examining exactly why I'm feeling a certain way. And I've never done that. So this is like a really new thing. Like the notes in my phone are very thorough about like why do I want to leave my job? Do I want to leave my job because I want to pursue creative? And those two things I can write essays on because it's like
Yeah.
I've left the job before because I want to be creative and I hated that. Do I want to leave? Why would I want to leave something that's stable or has a 401k and stock options and a retirement plan? And why would I do that and put stress on my wife when what's the urge? And then the other side of it's like there is no better time in life right now when you are out of debt, in savings, making money elsewhere, finding new ways to make money, ambitious, young, to take risk. So it's like the notes are extremely going nuts right now. So,
Yeah. That's good though that you're writing those things out. I mean, you're thinking them through and I think it's great because you're trying to find meaning, right, in the things that you're
not
doing.
signs, because I
Yeah.
think the signs you can make up.
Yeah.
I'm like, should I quit my job? There's a Y on the license plate in front of me, and I'm done. Yeah, so like it's not. That's another thing I want to like not be clear I'm not doing. I'm not just like praying.
Yeah.
God, give me a sign. I want to prayerfully walk in this.
Yeah, you want to go through it and thoughtfully, and it's great because you mentioned considering your wife, how it affects other people.
Right.
Those things are all important. At the same time, too, right? She's probably going to be the first one to tell you life is better when you're at your best, right?
Right. And she has.
Yeah.
And then I deal with that because I'm like, she'll tell me that regardless. But I'm like, life is good right now. I'm like, what? And then I'm like, wait, I could always go back. Wait, what? Like, I'm like, I'm being pulled, and like, I don't know why it's so hard. And I think partially it's so hard because I'm not jumping into something else,
Yeah.
It's like this more or less, I want to create space to be creative. And I sat in an hour webinar today from a thing online that I found about like renting spaces, like learning
Yeah.
how to leverage space and like even our home to like people to rent it out per a day or something and make all this, like this kind of income, passive income. And I was like, well, we're in the business of space, and it learned a lot, but it's like, and not just putting it into motion and learning what that looks like. So sorry.
No, it's okay.
Rant.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, this is all part of incarnation, right? It's all part of fleshing things out.
Yeah.
And being genuine and being real and allowing God to be present with you in those questions and, doubts and confusion. It's like, I don't know, God. I don't know. It's like my grandson, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Right? It's just the reality of oh my God, I have these choices and I'm not sure what's the best one. That's the reality of what it is. And just as I smiled at my grandson watching that video, I just see God smiling at us when you're saying, I don't know what to do, right? And we're just kind of like panicking. Yeah.
But like sitting in the conflict too, like you said, you don't have a problem with conflict. You have a problem with people not being able to have conversations. Like how we say that, what Peter Rollins says, like the absence of conflict is war. Yeah. And I honestly think like suicide and, and without dishonoring, the multiple layers of things that go along with that, that's war. You've avoided maybe the conflict at a certain level, and without being insensitive to the situation. I think there's so much of that in our life where we're like, I don't want to do with the conflict. I don't want to, so I'm going to go to war with it. And there's very little, there's very little sanity there.
Yeah. And very little light that comes out. A lot of heat and no light.
Right. A lot of heat.
Yeah. And that's so true. I mean, and so many levels, the people who are hurting, they have to go through the conflict. They have to be honest with it. They have to work through it.
Yeah.
The people who are struggling with depression or addiction, you have to do the work. I mean, it's like they say on, AA and some of those things, you have to do the steps, to get the effects. And if you work it, it works. Yeah. And that's kind of how it is with life. And to work it, we have to be real with it. And that's the gospel, is God is wanting to be real with us right where we're at, wherever we're at. And that's good news.
It is good news. Not good advice, it's good news.
Yeah, that's it. It's good news. Good news. Any last thoughts or any?
I don't know why I thought of this when you're talking, but it's strange to like always try to tie what we're talking about to how I'm feeling about God, like my view of who God is and my direct relationship with God. And I'm in a place right now, which, I would like to say I've been in this place my whole life, but it's not true, where I'm trying to amplify God and be a like conduit to his love, like I really, really desire people to feel love through me and them to be curious about where it's coming from, and then me connecting them to God. Like I really want him to be amplified, and I honestly believe, like, when God's saying things like, I'm uh, I'm strong in your weakness, and kind of like evidence that, like, in times of vulnerability where you do feel weak, where you do feel separated, where you feel alone, God's like, no, I'm like really at my best. Like I'm like really at my top of my game right now, and it's
Yeah.
it's like almost like a switch to realize um, what's going on. Like, you really have to stop. Like, the current is so strong,
Yeah.
and there's this like pull that's unbelievable. Like, a moment that I was praying while I was helping a customer yesterday, and she was Chinese speaking, and we had to communicate through Google Translate. So she had to say something, I say something, and then she say something. And this takes a very long time to sell a car like this. And some of the Chinese words don't translate exactly perfect,
Yeah.
But I could always normally get what she was saying. But there was a point where she was looking at the car, and I kind of zoned out for a second because I was praying, and again, about work. And then she goes, the thing that she wrote was, isn't it extraordinary? That's what it translated in English. And I remember telling Alex, like, I almost started crying because I was praying, and that word I immediately, extraordinary is something you relate to God, and then I was like, and I know what she meant. She was talking about the car. Isn't this one nice?
Yeah.
Nicer than this one. That's what she was trying to tell me. And then I looked over this Porsche, and I just remember thinking, like, why is that my unit of success? Why have I always thought someone drove me a car like that? If I drove a car like that, I'd be successful. And God, like, as immediately, like, switched success and gave me like a buffet of things that success could actually be, like time and connection and relationships and actual currency, like, not money. And it was like a moment where I was like, this is a God moment. Like, it's like and it only happened when I was at my vulnerable state, like you should be, if you're in this vulnerability low thing, like, you're in a good place. God's close, so.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. That really is. I mean, I've noticed that when things are really crazy, I mean, when things are really bad and I'm in a kind of do or die moments, or things are, really falling apart, there is an awareness to detail that I don't usually have.
Yeah.
I'm aware of how, the air feels on my skin.
Right. Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I'm aware of the sounds.
All of a sudden, like in a movie.
It really is. There's a soundtrack playing, and you hear and you smell and you see everything in heightened senses, because the reality of life being so needed, right now, and so present, it just makes everything, so much more. It's interesting because I think that those moments are the real moments, and everything else is, like medicated moments. They're just numb. We're numb by things. And
influenced by things.
Yeah.
Man, you get these little nuggets of God, and they normally come,
at those
there.
times.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that's part of incarnation, right? The moment, the reality, the need, when that's happening, that's where God is.
Right.
With us.
With us. God with us.
Amen. All right. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Love you, miss you. Again, we're going to be here next week as well. No other announcements happening, just because this is how life is right now. But join us on Sundays, 10 a.m. here. Remember to subscribe. Wednesdays, Take Two here. As things develop, we'll let you know. Remember to continue supporting the work at Genesis at thegenesisstory.com if you want to go there. And we appreciate you. Appreciate all you guys are doing to keep things going. I do love you and do miss you guys, and stay in touch. God bless you guys.
God
Take
bless.
care.